And Rev, I want to talk to you about a real blind spot that a lot of Democrats in the Beltway in D.C. have that you don't, and you've been warning about. But let's just say it right here, and let me say it slowly for my Democratic friends in Washington, D.C. Black voters are more conservative than you are. White woke leaders in Washington, D.C. Hispanic voters are more conservative than you are. White woke leaders in Washington, D.C. Asian American voters are more conservative than you are. White woke voters in Washington, D.C.
These Beltway elitists, these limousine liberals here in New York, don't live in the real world, and blacks have to, and browns have to deal with the real world every day, and we don't sit in crowded subways reading left-wing or right-wing propaganda.
Minority voters aren't monolithic, so why does the Democratic Party keep treating them like they are? I'm Yasmin Khan with Rebel HQ, and I am obviously a minority voter. I'm such a minority that in elementary school I was considered white because there wasn't a more relevant box for me to check, and white was, of course, the default. I am such a minority that I was considered a Hispanic scholar in high school, even though I am not Hispanic. I'm such a minority that even Indian people don't know what to do with me. And no, the Asian catch-all doesn't quite cover it. So who in my government actually represents me? Who in my government actually understands me, and who has even tried to? In the clip from Morning Joe, Joe asked Reverend Al Sharpton about why we're seeing more minority voters lean more centrist than left.
Can you please, I know you've done it a lot.
No.
Can you explain to white woke leaders, can you explain to them that they're not only losing white dudes in the upper Midwest, they're losing people of color?
The implication of all of this was that minority voters are actually more conservative than their Democratic voting records might suggest. And for decades, the Democrats have taken minority voters for granted based on the fact that the party is much kinder to minorities than the Republicans, which is generally true. But in a system that only gives people two options to choose from, you can only get by with being better than the other guy for so long. Professing that Black Lives Matter isn't enough. Actions speak louder than words, so eventually you're going to have to actually do something to make these minority lives better.
They're losing people of color because they really don't get the people of color's life. If you are living in a city, in a neighborhood that is inundated with crime, and you act like that is not an issue, you've already lost me. That is an issue. Yes, we must deal with policing. I've been out front of that. But you cannot ignore when 12-year-old kids who somebody's niece and neighbor is killed, and you act like that's a non-issue because you're too elitist to live on the ground. We don't want to be manipulated by right-wing elitist billionaires or by left-wing guys that don't understand our life on the ground, that is living in fear of crime, that is living as a result of inflation that is killing us. Many parts of this country, we need gas to go to work.
For years, minority voters have complained that the Democrats don't acknowledge them and the things that are actually affecting them because they assume that those votes are in the bag. And to a certain extent, that's true. I'm not going to switch over and vote Republican anytime soon, but does that mean that I'm happy with the way the Democrats have been running things? No. But that's just me. I'm politically involved. I'm politically active in my community. I read all the things and I talk to all the people, but I'm not the norm. Even most of you watching this right now probably aren't the norm either. Most people don't consume news media on their phone all day, and I think that's something that the more plugged-in population tends to forget, especially when we're dealing with older generations. Reverend Sharpton said something in the clip that I think makes a lot of sense. He said, these Beltway elitists, these limousine liberals in New York don't live in the real world, and blacks and browns have to live in the real world every day. And we don't sit in crowded subways reading left-wing or right-wing propaganda. Yeah. Is it dismissive when Democratic leaders choose not to prioritize things like inflation, the housing market, actual crime, and the lack of accountability for those perpetuating it? Poor infrastructure, healthcare costs, childcare needs, wage disparities, all these things that actually affect minority populations? Yeah, it's the definition of dismissive. Is it patronizing to be told you matter by elites who couldn't possibly understand what your life is about, only to be shown that you don't matter any further than the ballot you cast on election day? Absolutely. The Dems have got to do more. They've become a party that's attempting to do so much while actually doing very little when it comes to the issues that are facing their constituents. They hop on social causes in an effort to seem woke without truly understanding the sentiments behind that. And I say that because if they did truly understand them, they would do something about them. How can the Democrats expect the people of Flint, Michigan to have their backs when they never had theirs? The rhetoric of X group matters is literally the least that any politician or political group can do to address the concerns of these people, but they're not supposed to just stop there. So how can we fix this? Better representation will always be important in government. But apart from that, leaders can actually make a better effort to live amongst their constituents like they were originally supposed to, or at least make some effort to get out into their communities and talk to the people. I don't know if you guys have ever watched Succession, but there was a character on the show who is obviously based on Bernie Sanders. There was a scene where he was walking on the street and he was approached by one of his supporters. They spoke for a minute, shook hands, and then he got into his car. Now, one of his campaign advisors at the time was the daughter of a billionaire media mogul, basically a Murdoch, who insolently offered him hand sanitizer after shaking hands with the guy. So the Bernie guy was like, nah, I don't need hand sanitizer just for shaking somebody's hand. The Murdoch girl was then swiftly redressed for being disconnected from the people, another woke elitist attempting to curry favor with the normies so that she can use them to sort out whatever daddy issues she most definitely had. Entire populations aren't living their lives just to feed some egos or to help privileged people overcome their own emotional traumas. We're not numbers, we're people. We have our own lives to live, and it's really not too much to ask that our elected officials support us in doing so. The path to progress is long and hard, we know that, and the people that we're up against also know that. Still, we're not doing ourselves any favors if we fail to truly see one another.